Good morning, Metro Tigers. How are you today? We are going to read a book called Baby Flo. If you look at the picture here, you see that Baby Flo is in the spotlight and she is happy. She's smiling. And this book is written by Alan Schroeder. He's the author and is illustrated by Cornelius Van Wright and Ying Hua who drew this beautiful picture and all the pictures you're about to see. So let's open up the book. Ooh, I see some nice shoes there. And let's get started. Straight up, Florence was a remarkable child, and that's a fact. She could sing before she was hardly out of diapers, and she won her first medal for dancing while other children were still learning their ABCs. Later, when Florence became famous and had her name up in lights, folks back in Washington, D.C. weren't the least bit surprised. They had known all along that someday Baby Flo would become a star. It was just a matter of time. Let's turn the page. Go Alley, that's where Florence got her start. It was in one of the poorest neighborhoods in Washington. Jobs were hard to come by. Florence's daddy took whatever work he could find, but there was never enough money. Not for food, not for clothing, not even for coal to keep the house warm in winter. Florence and her sisters had to look for lettuce crates and torn up pieces of cardboard to put into the stove. Their mama Nellie was a washerwoman, and sometimes when it was cold outside and the floorboards were like ice, Florence and her sister Maud would stand close to the tin wash tub. "You stand there. You're going to get all wet," Nellie would say. But the girls didn't budge. They were hoping their mama would accidentally splash some of the hot water onto their bare feet. It wasn't the best way to stay warm, but it was better than nothing. Nellie passed the time by singing to herself as she washed and scrubbed and ironed. Any song would do, but she liked the sad ones best. "Sing with me," she said to Florence and Flo, who would quit whatever she was doing and pipe right up. Like a little bird, she would fill the room with song. Fill the room with song. You see that? It's a picture of Nellie and Flo and her sister, and they're at the washboard. Every day at 3 o'clock, Nellie would drop the clean laundry into a big white sack. Carefully, she balanced the sack on top of her head. Then, taking Flo by the hand, she set out to make her deliveries. Nellie had all sorts of customers: rich white women, families with kids, store owners, school teachers. She even did laundry for the butcher on L Street, but only because they paid so well. She had to use lots of bleach and scrub hard before she could get the stains out of the butcher's apron. One afternoon, for fun, the butcher asked Florence if she would sing them a song, any little tune she knew. Problem was, Florence had never sung in public before. "Go on," her mother said softly. "Just pretend you're at home singing with me." So Florence did. With her eyes half closed, she sang 2 old Irish songs, real sad ones. "Mother Montree" and "Little Grey Home in the West." You should have seen those big men afterward. Half had tears streaming down their face. The other half were too surprised to cry. Where had a 3-year-old learned to sing like that? They wondered. The next thing Florence knew, the butchers were pressing money into her hand. Dimes, nickels, quarters, $half. Then they begged her to sing the same 2 songs again. Look at Florence singing, guys. Do you guys like to sing? Later at home, Nellie counted the money. Then she counted it again. $3.85. That was more than she made doing laundry. She put the money in a safe place. Then she asked Florence how many songs she knew. I know lots, said Florence. Nellie grinned. Well, get ready, girl, because you're going to learn lots more. Florence worked hard and learned everything her mother taught her. At night, when her daddy came home feeling tired and discouraged, Florence would make him smile by singing and dancing for him. You're pretty good, John remarked. You must have got that from my side of the family. In your dreams, said Nellie. She got it from me. That's who, fool. So mom and dad having a little argument about who she got her talent from. So guys, look, after a couple of months, Nellie and John decided it was time to show off their little girl. John had a friend who was the manager of the BHL Theater in Washington. The manager heard Florence sing and said, yes, he'd be delighted to put her in the show. And that's how Florence Mills began her career at age 3, wearing a nightgown on the stage of the BHL, holding a candle and singing a lullaby to the audience. She got off to a good start, but halfway through, something happened. It was scary standing on that big stage all by herself. And suddenly, Florence burst into tears. Her sister had to come out and lead her off stage, but the audience applauded anyway. There weren't many 3-year-olds who could do what she'd done, let alone do it so well. Nope, not many at all. Look at Florence. She was sad at first. She got nervous singing on stage. Oh, I see a happy face again. One of the amazing things about Florence Mills was that she could dance as well as she could sing. Some said better. If she was playing outdoors and happened to hear music, her whole face would light up. Uh-oh, her sister Mark would say, here she go again. Florence couldn't stop what came next, even if she wanted to. With a big grin, she started clapping out the beat. Then off she'd go, dancing her way from one end of the block to the other. She danced so fast, it seemed to the other children that her feet hardly touched the pavement. Even the neighbor ladies would hang out the windows when Florence got going. It was always a treat, they said, to watch that child move. Look at Florence, she going, you go girl. At that time, the most popular dance was the cakewalk. That was a high-stepping, high-strutting, look-at-me sort of dance that people couldn't get enough of. Florence picked it up real easy. She'd cakewalk her way to the market, to school. She'd even cakewalk her way to church on Sunday. You just stop it now, the minister would say. I believe the devil's in your feet. Every month, it seemed, there were cakewalk contests in Washington. Florence entered as many as she could, and she usually won, too. That's how good she was. By the time she was 6, she had a whole slew of medals hanging around her neck. Now, I know some students had seen a video about the cakewalk, and that's when I went in on a learning walk with Miss Ursula. Miss Ursula had a wonderful lesson about cakewalk, so you guys know about that. Word began to spread that there was an amazing little girl living in Goat Alley. Baby Flo was her name, and she could dance the pants off anybody. Well, the elegant men and women in Washington just had to see that. Fancy horse-drawn carriages began to pull up in front of 23 Goat Alley. To the neighbors' astonishment, Florence would come prancing out with her medals around her neck, like Cinderella going to the ball. You be good now, her mother would say, and don't you be gone long. Then Florence would be driven off to some fancy house where she would sing and dance for the powerful people of Washington. One of them, an ambassador's wife, gave her a shiny bracelet for teaching her guests how to do the cakewalk. Florence was mighty proud of that bracelet. For a long time, she wouldn't even take off for anything. Not at bath time, not for bed. That bracelet was better than all her medals put together. Look at Florence looking at her bracelet. Let's turn the page. One wintry night, Florence and her father were on the street returning home. When they passed by the BHL Theater, John gave a little laugh. I never forget that time you burst out crying in the middle of your song, he said. Florence was embarrassed. Please, Daddy, don't make fun of me, she begged. John laughed again. I ain't making fun of you. I just remembered, that's all. He gave Florence shoulder a squeeze. I was mighty proud of you that night, having the courage to get up there and sing like that. I know I couldn't have done it. I wish I hadn't cried, Florence said. Tell me, Daddy, would you have cried? John grinned. Of course not. I'd have fainted. He pointed at the marquee hanging above. Someday, he said, someday we're going to see your name up there in lights. Maybe, said Florence, but she sounded doubtful. No maybe about it, John said firmly. It'll happen. And this is the marquee right here. In 1903, when Florence was 7, a popular black show came to town. It was called The Son of Hams. And Florence was thrilled to learn that one evening there was going to be a dance contest during intermission. Can I enter, she asked. Of course, her mother said, but it's not a cakewalk contest. It's a buck and wing contest, and that's something altogether different. What's buck and wing? Well, said Nellie, it's a lot of tapping for one thing, and a whole bunch more throwing in. Don't worry, John said. I can teach you the steps. So she's getting ready to learn a new dance, guys. The contest was only 3 days away. From a box under his bed, John retrieved his harmonica. Then to the sound of his own lively music, he performed a buck dance in the middle of the room. He kept it simple, nothing fancy, so Florence could follow every step. Easy as pie, John said when he was finished. Now it's your turn. But the buck and wing was a harder dance to learn than the cakewalk. There were more turns, more steps to remember, and Florence kept forgetting which foot to come down on. No, her papa kept saying. It's right, right, shuffle left, then the ball change. Try it again, and not so fast this time. See, Flo, she's trying to get it, guys. She's trying. Finally, Thursday arrived, the night of the contest. Florence was so nervous she could hardly eat her supper. When she and her father arrived at the Empire Theater, they discovered that 17 people had signed up for the contest. That worried Florence. There had never been more than 8 or 9 at the cakewalk contest. When it's my turn to go on, she asked her daddy, will you stand in the wings where I can see you? John shook his head. You don't need to be looking off into the wings, he said. Keep your eyes front and center. But where are you going to be? Florence asked. I want to know. In my seat. That's where, applauding my full head off. See, Dad? Just like Dad's to reassure you guys. Florence had to wait until intermission for the contest to begin. Then she had to wait another half hour for her name to be called. The MC grinned when he saw how little she was. Ladies and gents, he announced, I got a real treat for you. Coming up next is a pint-sized dynamo. I give you the one, the only baby Florence Mills. You see her? She's getting ready to go out on stage. There was a drum roll. The clarinets began to wail and the trumpets went tat-a-tat-tat. Bathed in a pretty blue light, Florence came dancing out from the wings. She started off slowly, tapping her way to the front of the stage. Then as the music picked up speed, she began to dance faster. Hop feet, she heard someone yell. Tear it up, girl. Pretty soon, Florence was dancing as fast as she could. When she was finished, the whole house rocked with applause. But the buck and wing was a tricky dance. Florence wished she had more practice. She looks so pretty in her pink dress, right? The dancers all came together to take a bow. Then the judge strutted on stage. What a night this had been, he declared. One sensational dance after another. I'm sure you'll agree that one little lady stood out. The winner is Miss Clarice Johnson. Let's all give Clarice a big hand. The rest of the dancers were shooed off into the wing. So Florence said to herself, I didn't win after all. Don't give it another thought, John said when he met her backstage. I thought you did real good, especially the part where you kicked your leg up high. I'm telling you, Flo, you're a born entertainer. Florence nodded, but secretly she felt disappointed. She had so wanted to win. They were about to leave when a manager of the theater came running up. I'm glad I caught you, he sounded out of breath. Listen, he said to Florence, how would you like to be a part of the show, The Son of Hams? Florence couldn't tell if the man was joking or not. But mister, she said, I didn't win. That Clarice lady did. The manager scoffed. What do I care about a medal? I saw what you did out there. And I heard the folks and they were going crazy. Now listen up, he said. Every night for the next week, I'm going to have you perform an intermission. First, you're going to sing a song, something peppy, then you'll dance just like you did tonight. You do that, and I'll give you 25 cents a night. Is it a deal? Florence looked up at her father. He gave her a warm nod. You betcha, she told the manager. See? Outside on the sidewalk, Florence couldn't stop spinning around. She was so excited. She couldn't wait to tell her mother the good news. I feel like celebrating, said John. Let's go get some ice cream. Just then, a workman in overalls came out and set up a ladder in front of the theater. With a small bucket in his hand, he climbed up and began adding letters to the electric marquee. Florence and her father watched him. When he was done, the man began to climb back down the ladder. What do you guys think is in that marquee? What do you think is going to be up there on that marquee? Let's see. Florence's wide eyes looked up at the sign and it read, Comedy Hit, The Sons of Ham, starring Charles Hart and Dan Avery. Special added attraction, 1 week only, baby Florence Mills. She couldn't believe it. Neither could John. There it is, he whispered. I told you it would happen, didn't I? Your name up in lights. The two of them stood for a long time looking up at the electric sign. Then together, hand in hand, they headed down to the street to Tucker's to get some ice cream. And do you see baby Flo's name up here? Dad told her it would happen. And guys, that is the end of our story. Yep, and there's just some pages where you can see some pictures of the real Flo, see, as an adult. And that is the end of our story. Thank you guys. That was such a beautiful story. You guys can do anything that you put your minds to, and we all believe in you here at Metro.